Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the show, everybody. And welcome to a very special day because for the rare opportunity, we're going to talk about politics and the election and everything tomorrow. We're not going to talk about tomorrow. This episode is the day before Election Day in America. So that's what we're going to talk about. Kim, how do you feel about that?
About talking about it or about the election? Because I could answer both.
Talking about it.
I feel like it needs to be addressed. I know everybody has an opinion on it. And we've never really taken this platform to talk about politics and our personal preferences in that regard. But there's so much energy that is being built up around this election. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And so I guess I want to relieve some of that a bit. Maybe take some pressure off of some stigmas, some expectations, some polarizing views, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I'm excited to get into it just because it's not something we talk about much on this platform, but I do think it's an important thing to talk about, at least if you're American. Tomorrow will have a direct impact on certain issues for the next few years, sometimes more than others, but it definitely will impact some part of your life. And so I think that that's worth addressing. It's worth paying attention to. So here we are. Do you want to kick it off on just maybe we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but just like the general feel of election season?
Sure. I think I kind of touched on it. I think there's been a lot of energy on this election. I will say from what I've observed, both in like mainstream media, in social media, and in like independent media sources, and even among people that I just know personally. I can't say that I've experienced any life-giving energy from this. I know that sounds terrible, but like the thing that is screaming from all of this has been like division. And it is like, you said this earlier before we hit record, like choosing your team. And teams aren't always bad or anything like that. But I think there's a difference between saying, oh, I align more with this person, and so this is how I will respond to that. I will be on that team. And saying, oh, this is the only person I can stand behind. Everyone else is wrong, and everyone else needs to get in line with what I believe. Two completely different things. And for me, I guess I'll just get into my own personal opinions on these things. To me, I think this is such an individual choice. And I just don't know that we have any business deciding what others should think or believe, or how they should vote, or if they should vote. I think it's such a personal thing and personalized thing, just like we've talked about. Everybody has a different purpose. Everybody has a different destiny, calling, gifting, anointing, all of these things. And the freedom to be able to walk that out to accomplish those things that you're called to, I think is so important. And it's so individual because, Josh, if you are someone who is made to share love wherever you go, if that is just like how you were made, and that's the loudest song in your heart, if that is what it is, but mine is spiritual warfare, it could be something that could divide us. And I could go, you're wrong. This is not about love. This is about picking the right team. This is about, claiming the world for God. I don't think either one is wrong. I think it's just different expressions of who we are and what we're called to do. And so I think the divisiveness is just kind of nasty and unnecessary. And I don't know that people should be losing relationships over which candidate they're choosing to back.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that team aspect of it has been around for a long time. But it definitely feels like it has been ramped up. I don't know. We were talking about this before too, and I was like, maybe it's just because it's when I started to be more aware of politics and in the voting age group, but Obama's first election sort of to me felt like the beginning of the like at least in my life, the noticing of the us and them team. I think it's pretty interesting. I recently saw a video where they did this study, and they took a group of people and they showed them a set of policies. And I think it was more along the lines of social welfare type policies. And some of them were more restrictive, some of them were more open and giving. And they asked them which one would they pick, and then they used that as their control group. And then they took a group of people and they said, okay, which one would you pick? This is which one your preferred party has generally set behind. And a lot of the answers changed based on people tended to agree if I'm always a Democrat and the Democrat Party liked this policy, people tended to stay on that side of the table. And then at the end, they talked to them about oh, did you realize you flip-flopped? And that you stayed true to your party. And they said the concerning part was almost everybody said, no, that was my independent opinion, except for it was very much so informed. It seemed to be very much so informed by the information of knowing which party liked which one. And so the psychologist that was talking about this was like, it's to some extent it was at a unconscious level for those people, because they were trying to be fair, but there was something in them that was like, okay, this is where my team is at. And that sense of belonging, that team aspect of it is important in life. It's important to know you're connected to a group of people, because from our primal ages, that meant safety. Belonging to something meant safety. And I think to some extent, it still means that. And so, I understand why that's there. What I wish our country would do a little bit better job of is education around things, around policies, around politicians. Generally, with big elections, we get quite a bit of information on presidential candidates, or maybe governors. Maybe you do locally with your mayor or something like that. But then you show up to vote, and there's all these other names and all these other things you're voting on. And many people have no idea what it is. So they just vote by the R or the D that is on there. Or I've known people who are like, yeah, I don't know what to do with those, but I like that person's name better than I like that person's name, so that's who I voted for. And like, it's like, oh, once you get to that, there's a pretty wide variety. And there's some groups that publish information on, this is the candidates in your area and this is what you're voting on, and these are their political stances, but you sort of have to look for that information. It's not readily available to the voter. And I think that's a disservice to the people and kind of a disservice to politics, because it does impact the nation. I had told you earlier, like, whether or not you want to vote or don't want to vote, I personally believe that election day in the United States, especially presidential election day, should be a national holiday. And like, you, except for some extreme circumstances, should have to go into a building to vote. And I just think that it's like, that is a core piece of how our country functions, and that should be a piece of what is celebrated. We should celebrate that we have a democratic nation and not a country where it's where elections are either held much differently or where there aren't elections. And I don't think voting should be required. If you don't want to vote, don't vote. If you don't like either candidate, don't vote for either candidate. I think that should be your decision to make. But I do think that it should be. I do think it should be handled a little bit differently. And I especially think in the media it should be handled a little differently, because we've all seen over the past few years that the media is certainly not neutral. Depending on which media station you watch, you will certainly be fed something that pushes you one direction or the other, pushes you to one candidate or the other, instead of it sort of just being covered as news or neutral information. And if it's your opinion, I think it's great. Like, have your opinion on who you should vote for. Have your opinion on why you should vote for them. And if you want to share your opinion with people, I think that's great too. Like, influence is fine. Use your influence to explain to people why you're voting the way you are. But what I think is dangerous is when we start telling people they have to vote a certain way or else. There's a difference between me sharing with Kim, oh, this is my opinion, this is how I form that opinion, this is the information that I am basing that off of, and us having a conversation about it, versus me saying, well, if you don't vote for this person, then that means you are this, or that means you believe this, or you can't call yourself this if you don't vote this way. And that happens a lot. Like, we get closer and closer to election time and people get more and more fidgety and more party oriented, and more us and them. And like, I remember times when presidential debates were, yeah, I don't agree with that, versus a presidential debate where the majority of the time is just calling the other person a liar or demeaning their character, or whatever it is. It was more like, let's talk about what we're actually running on versus talking about the other person. It's far more important to me, especially if you're a Christian, because throughout the entire Bible, God uses lots of different people to accomplish what he wants. He uses wicked people, he uses righteous people. And so if you're a Christian, like maybe spend more time praying about it and less time listening to talking heads discuss it. Um, maybe don't just vote a certain way because your pastor said that. I don't know. And I'm not saying your pastor is wrong, but there is definitely, the closer we get to election time, there is definitely more that comes up. Like, it pushes things to the surface in people, and it's a very interesting thing.
For sure. I mean, I've seen some of that stuff. There are people that I know personally who are on social media saying things like, if you don't vote for insert this name, you're not a Christian. Like, just crap like that is total overreaching. Okay. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, I'm fed up by it. Like, there's just no need for that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Because again, I really think that we have to vote based on our own conscience and our own convictions on who is the right person for the job. What is it that they stand for? What have you been called to do? I mean, have you asked the Lord? Have you gone, hey, God, who do you want me to vote for? Or even more controversial, like, do you want me to vote? You know? And have you listened to the answer? And it would be my guess that different people will get different answers. And I think that's okay. But I think, to what you were talking about with the team mentality and stuff, I hate to see people get their identities wrapped up in a party, in a political party. And I was thinking about this before we started recording, and honestly, politics give me the ick. Like, ugh, you know how we talk about religion, like that system that was built around a concept or a way of doing something or a way of believing that just kind of over time that gets twisted and then it just gets icky. I feel like politics are to government as religion is to faith. And it's like the system where then people become these players. Like, I almost feel like I'm a pawn in all of this. I'm not even, when I'm looking at social media, when I'm just seeing the little bit of stuff that I'm being exposed to, because I've honestly been trying to stay out of it. I'm trying to be convinced that one person is bad, so you vote for this person. But I have yet to see a compelling case for either of our two presidential candidates that says, I stand for this, this, and this. I believe this, this, and this. It is my intention to do this, this, and this. Like you said, with debates and stuff, it's turned into this, but you are bad because of this, as opposed to, this is how I would solve that. And it is just like, all of a sudden things are so twisted and it's hard to even know which way is up. And I think that might be why we see people clinging to one team or another, is because I don't actually know that we're being rightly informed. And it's very difficult to make a well-informed decision on this. And for me personally, this is how I've been approaching it. And behind the scenes, Josh and I have been talking about this for probably a year.
Probably, yeah.
Maybe longer, because I think we were talking about even RFK Jr. the summer before this one. But I mean, we've been talking about this, and we've been like listening and leaning into this with the Lord. And for me, I'm in a position where I'm not going to vote, or at this point, there's still time, I guess. I'm not going to vote. And it's not because of indifference. It's not that at all. And it's not because I don't care about the government of our country being upheld. It is because when I go to the Lord about it and I ask what He wants me to do, He has told me, and this is not prescriptive for everyone, this is what He has told me personally for my life. He has told me, stay out of it. And I say, okay. And so I don't feel like I need to go pick one or the other. And I have people in my family who have very strong opinions, who are very disappointed that I would not be voting. I have friends. I just went to lunch with a friend today whom I love dearly. And they were trying to convince me, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're not going to vote. Like, how could you do that? And it really comes down to, this is my relationship. And if He says stay out of it, I'm going to stay out of it. But if He, in the 11th hour, if He comes and He goes, okay, Kim, you need to go do this, I'll do it. I'll do it. But for now, that's kind of my stance on it. And I think it's, at least my general feeling of it is, I've got the ick over the system. And when it comes down to it, and especially with this concept of, if you don't vote this way, you're not a Christian. If we take it from that stance, when it comes down to it, is God not sovereign regardless of what human has been put in a place of power? Is there any decision that we could make individually or collectively that would negate God's ability to outwork His plan in the earth? And for me, the answer is a resounding no. Is He the creator of all? Does He reign on heaven and earth? Yes, I believe this. And so it's not that I don't think that this election is important. It's not that I think everyone should not vote. I'm not saying those things at all. But I really think it's so individual. And I really think it's important for us to unite, not over a two-party system, but over who we are, who we were made to be. I mean, what do we want at the end of the day? I don't want that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I don't want the good or bad option. I really want life. And if it is life-giving for you to vote this way, then by all means, please do so. And if it is life-giving for you to vote this way, then by all means, please do so. Do I think God is still sovereign in all of it? Absolutely. Do I think He's relented control because now all of a sudden we've elected this person? He's like, okay, I'm out. You guys, we're done here. I don't think that's how He works.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I do think that that God is sovereign. And I do think we've talked about this quite a bit, but like, I think being authentic to yourself is one of the most important things you can do. And so if being authentic to yourself means voting for Kamala Harris, please do that. If being authentic to yourself means voting for Donald Trump, please do that. If being authentic to yourself means not voting, please do that. I think that's, and you may change and you may grow, but I think you have to stay true, and you have, the more you can live your life with a clear conscience, the better you will feel in every situation, the better your life will be in every situation.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and allowing that space for others to do the same, I think, is super important. For I don't know how many times, probably 2 or 3 times. I had a work friend who politically believed opposite of me, but one of my very best friends.
Yeah.
And mind you, that did not put like a kink in our friendship. That didn't make it so that we could no longer be friends or that we couldn't agree on other things. But for a long time, we used to go together on election day. We would go to vote and we knew we were canceling each other out. Like consciously, we know this is what's happening. And then we would go have lunch afterwards. And you know what? I didn't go like scorning her name because I knew she voted some other way. No, I still went happy to go have lunch with my friend and satisfied that I did what I felt I was supposed to do and that she did what she felt she was supposed to do. And I think it's kind of that. I talked about division, that divisiveness that's kind of been this underlying energy that it's coming to a head at this point. Like it is intense. But from that, I've seen hatred boil over. And I mean, I made this example earlier. Josh, you're made to love. I don't actually know that that's at the core of the whole point of what you're supposed to do. But honestly, I think as believers, and even in scripture, it says this in red letters by Yeshua, you know, that they will know his followers by their love. And when we are faced with something like an election that determines 4 years in the expanse of eternity, just a little perspective, if we allow that energy to turn us into people who hate, I think there's something that we need to check with our hearts. And I think that's gone too far. Just very honestly. I think there's no need for any of this to ever turn that way. I have friends, I have family. I mean, even my mom, she believes differently than I do in the political arena. And you know what? I don't fault her for it. And I'm not going to turn to hating her. Can you imagine? Like, I'm not going to turn to hating my mother because she looks at things differently than I do. And I just think, man, that is a line that we don't need to toe. Like that, just if we could just back away from that level of division over this stuff, I think we would all be better off for it. And truly, one of the reasons that I have such an ick over this election and some of the politics with it is that I don't see an instance where either one wins the election and it unites us as a country. And it's not because I don't want that, because I do. We are the United States of America, but we've become so much more divided. And if the election goes this way, these people are going to be mad. And if it goes this way, these people are going to be mad. And I just, honestly, I want to see something that brings us together and that allows us to once again see what we have in common and not what we have that is different. And maybe I'll run for president in 2028. Just kidding, you guys.
That would be very interesting. That would be I would be mind blown because that would be a vast departure from the Kimb that I know. But
That's funny.
I think it'd be pretty interesting.
You want to know something wild? And I wonder if this is why I am so passionate about kind of the system behind this, maybe some of it. A couple episodes ago, we talked about lineage and like the blessings that have been passed down from our ancestors and legacies and that kind of stuff. And one of my grandfathers, like their multiples, was one of the founding fathers of our country, signed the Declaration of Independence. And I think if I'm speaking to that and what's been passed down from that, like I have a love for this country and I do want to see it thrive. It's just I guess it's the ick that's been infused that is hard to deal with. It doesn't make me think that the country's not worth it. I just, man, I want to see it come together again.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good place to be with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what you guys, when you clicked on this episode, thought it was going to be like. If you knew us or have listened to the show for a while, you probably knew we weren't actually going to tell you who to vote for. But I hope that it has made you think, and more than anything, I hope that it has made you want to sit down with the Father to think about your role in tomorrow's election. And whoever is elected, I truly pray for them and pray for their success, because that means the success of our nation and the place that I love to live and the people that I love to be with.
Yeah. Really well said. Okay. Well, I hope this didn't turn anybody off too much. But we appreciate you listening. I hope not. Again, it is never the intention to divide. It is always to unite. And I think that is so important.
Yeah.
And to remind myself included to love first.
Yeah. It's a good thing. All right. Well, we will see you guys in a few days. And maybe we'll know what happened with the election. Who knows?
Maybe. We'll see.
We'll see. See you guys later.
Hey, thanks for listening. Keep up with us along this journey by liking, subscribing, and becoming a member through YouTube.
Members get exclusive access to bonus content with our guests, deeper dives into topics, and a look into other projects. We're glad to have you here. See you next time.